the girl who failed 100 times but never gave up. A motivational story. Chapter 1, The First Failure. Aisha sat in the examination hall, her hands trembling as she wrote her answers. She had studied hard, but deep inside, she was afraid. When the results came out, her heart sank. She had failed. Tears filled her eyes as she clutched the report card. Her parents were disappointed, and her classmates whispered behind her back. She failed again, they murmured. But Aisha refused to let their words break her spirit. Instead of giving up, she made a promise to herself, I will try again. Determined to improve, she woke up early every morning and studied late into the night. She revised every mistake she had made. But when the next exam arrived, she failed once more. It was painful, but Aisha reminded herself, failure is just a step toward success. Despite the disappointment, she wiped her tears and stood up stronger. She knew she had a long journey ahead, but one thing was certain, she was not going to quit. Chapter 2, The Weight of Expectations. Aisha's parents wanted her to do well, but after her repeated failures, their support started to fade. Maybe studies aren't for you, her father sighed. You should try something else. Her mother, though upset, still had faith in her. Try again, Aisha. But this time, change your method. Her teachers, too, were doubtful. They believed she had potential, but with every failure, their encouragement weakened. Are you sure you're putting in enough effort? One teacher asked. Aisha nodded, determined to prove herself. Instead of feeling discouraged, Aisha took their words as a challenge. She experimented with new study techniques, asked for extra help, and refused to let the weight of expectations crush her. I may fail again, but I won't stop trying, she told herself. But when she sat for another test, the result was the same, failure. However, this time, she did not cry. She just took a deep breath and planned her next move. Chapter 3, Learning from Mistakes. Aisha decided to analyze her failures. What was she doing wrong? She went through every past paper, trying to understand her mistakes. She realized that she often panicked in exams, forgetting what she had learned. To fix this, she started practicing under timed conditions. She also focused on her weakest subjects, spending extra hours perfecting them. But despite her efforts, the next test brought another failure. This time, instead of feeling sad, she smiled. At least I know where I went wrong, she told herself. Every failure teaches me something new. She started keeping a failure journal, noting down what went wrong and how she could improve. With each mistake, she became wiser. She was still failing, but she was also growing. Chapter 4, The Power of Perseverance. People started making fun of Aisha. She has failed so many times, she should just give up, they laughed. But Aisha ignored them. She had read stories of great people who had failed before succeeding. If they could rise above failure, so could she. She wrote motivational quotes on her wall. Every morning, she read them aloud. Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts, she repeated to herself. She faced her next exam with a new mindset. She wasn't afraid of failing anymore, she was afraid of quitting. She knew the journey was tough, but her dream was worth it. And so, despite failing once again, she smiled. One day, I will succeed, she whispered. And when I do, it will be worth every failure. Chapter 5, The Road Less Traveled. Aisha realized that studying harder wasn't enough, she needed to study smarter. She observed how top students prepared and adopted their techniques. She made mind maps, used flashcards, and even taught others to reinforce her learning. Yet, when the results arrived, she had failed once again. This time, it hurt deeply. She had given her best, so why was she still falling short? But then she remembered something, every great success story is built on failures. Instead of focusing on how many times she had failed, she focused on how much she had learned. One evening, her mother found her studying late into the night. Aisha, don't you feel tired? She asked. Aisha smiled. I do, Ami. But my dream is bigger than my pain. Chapter 6, The Mockery and the Motivation. At school, students whispered behind her back. She's failed more times than we can count, one girl giggled. She should just accept it's not for her. Aisha felt the sting of their words, but she didn't let them break her. Instead, she turned their mockery into motivation. One day, these same people will see me succeed, she thought. She started surrounding herself with positive influences, teachers who believed in her, friends who encouraged her, and books that inspired her. She read about scientists, writers, and inventors who had failed hundreds of times before achieving greatness. If they can rise above failure, so can I, she whispered to herself every morning. Chapter 7, A Small Victory. After failing over 50 times, Aisha finally saw a slight improvement. It wasn't a complete success, but she had passed one section of the exam for the first time. It was a small step, but it meant everything to her. She celebrated this victory, knowing it was proof that her efforts were working. Even if I improve little by little, one day, I will make it, she said to herself. She used this success as fuel, pushing herself even harder. The failures still came, but now, they didn't crush her, they only made her stronger. Her parents noticed the change in her. She's failing, but she's also growing, her mother told her father. Maybe she's meant to achieve something bigger than just passing an exam. Chapter 8, The Final Attempt. Aisha had now failed nearly 100 times. But she wasn't the same girl who had started this journey, she was stronger, wiser, and more determined. The night before her exam, she closed her books and whispered a prayer. Ya Allah, I have given my best. If success is written for me, I will take it with gratitude. If failure comes again, I will take it as another lesson. She walked into the examination hall with confidence, answered every question with clarity, and left without fear. She had done her part. When the results were announced, she hesitated before opening her paper. But when she saw the marks, her hands trembled, she had passed. Not just passed, but with excellent marks. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she fell into sujood. Alhamdulillah, she whispered. I did it. Her journey wasn't just about passing an exam, it was about proving to herself that failure was never the end. Because the girl who failed 100 times never gave up, and that's why she succeeded. The end.